Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of The Classy Room. I'm your host, Ryan Joseph, along with my co-hosts, Elliot Choi, Sean McCurry, and Jenna Birch. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what we're doing here at The Classy Room. Each episode, we're going to dive into one facet of the funding disparity in public education in Maryland, dissecting the issues and proposing some solutions, hopefully. We'll just typically break it down by analyzing representatives from relatively high-funded districts, relatively average-funded districts, and relatively low-funded districts. Episode 4 is also going to bring a special surprise. Today, we're going to start off by discussing the environment. Not like the outdoors environment with trees and animals and everything, but learning environment. Where are students learning and what conditions are they learning in? So we're going to start off with discussing classroom. So according to the Interagency Commission on School Construction in Maryland's fiscal year 2021 annual report of the maintenance of Maryland's public school buildings, the average square footage per student in Baltimore City was 213 square feet per student. Baltimore County was 146 square feet per student, and Montgomery County was 152 square feet per student. The average in Maryland is 156 square feet per student. Now, Baltimore City had a student-teacher ratio of 16:1. Baltimore County had a student-teacher ratio of 15:1, and MoCo had a student-teacher ratio of 15:1, with the average also being 15:1. My question to you guys is, based on just the amount of information of space and teachers, how do you guys think like class size would affect learning with having larger versus smaller class sizes?
Well, I think that is class size with regards to both space and the amount of students in the class that's taking up that space is massive when it comes to how effective learning is. And we see this even today in college, like lectures versus discussions and stuff like that, and the proximity to the teachers and the types of questions you can ask and stuff. In larger classrooms, you get a feeling of being almost I don't know, as a listener instead of a learner. And I think there's a massive difference between the two that that does affect the way you learn. When you're a learner in like a smaller class, you can get more individual attention from the teachers. You're not as maybe as nervous to ask questions and stuff. And that can be really instrumental, asking questions and engaging with classmates and with the teacher or professor is very large is a very large point when it comes to the quality of of your education and how effective the class is when it comes to learning things.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then, like, because small class sizes like definitely foster an environment that large classes don't. But on the flip side, like not having enough space for the students is a big problem because I know, like at my school, we had a class that, I mean, we had like a class of students that didn't have a classroom to be in. So they were just in like this random little room without any desks, any just chairs, and that's it. And like that's definitely an issue because you need to be in like a comfortable environment to learn and like have the proper like materials around you. So I think there are always like those two sides of the thing.
I agree. I think it's hard. It's like, I think students should have like plenty of room physically, but I don't think you should try to pack, like having more room in a classroom doesn't mean you should try to pack a ton of students in that room. Like you said, when you're talking about, like you guys are saying class size, like physical class size, but I also think like student class size is important, like not having too many kids in a room, because if you have too many kids in a room, like the teacher isn't able to delegate enough attention to each kid so that every kid is able to get like the kind of attention they need when it comes to education, and like making sure the teacher is able to like actually like listen to them, or if they have a question, answer the question, or if they want something to say, they can say it. But I think that also making sure each student has enough room physically is also important, so kids have enough room to like have their own space, be like in their own little area, and not have to like share with other kids, if that makes sense, like share their space, because everyone deserves like personal space.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And another thing, before we move on, that I want to mention with regards perhaps to more current issues would be class size and available space with regards to COVID, because that's a massive how COVID affects facilities. the less class space you have during COVID, the larger risk there is of you getting COVID. There's just more students in a smaller space. It's gonna it will happen eventually. Another thing is you can tie in the funding to some schools had money to install barriers on desks in these classrooms, while others, I imagine, that may have not gotten as much funding as perhaps the higher funded counties or school districts. They didn't have the resources available to put those dividers in, and that's another way that students are at a greater risk of COVID.
Yeah, we didn't have dividers at our school, and I don't know if that's a matter of funding, but like when it came to lunch or just the general classroom, we did not have that at all. And I think it's good because like to some extent you're not restricting the kids, but also COVID causes the problem of like you don't want to get COVID. So I think it's like a hard topic.
Yeah, I'm kind of completely on the flip side of that. In my school, we had, or at least when everyone came back like full time, and I think even during hybrid learning before everyone came back full time, there were barriers on each desk in each room, and it was, I don't know, it felt like you were even more separated from the teacher at that point, because not only is there masks and you can't really hear, but there's also like that physical barrier of the dividers. But that's just something to keep in mind.
I think another important thing to note with class size, at least in my experience, is like even ignoring COVID or setting COVID aside for a moment. It's like as you get more kids in a class, it will tend more towards what's in economics is known as the free rider problem, where because the less you think your impact, like your presence or effort actually has an impact, like the less return you get, the less likely you are to put in that effort, which on a more like macro scale results in like things not getting done as much, or like education as a whole kind of faltering in like the classroom setting at least. Moving on from this discussion, we have a message from our sponsor for this episode. So have you ever had homework trouble, but your parents couldn't help, and it was too late to email your teacher? Have you ever felt lost on a problem with nowhere to turn, but if you could figure out that next step, that first step, you'd be golden?
That's totally me.
Well, do I have the service for you? Next Step, the homework helper of the future. With the Next Step student subscription, you have multiple different options for how you can use it. You have the flagship Next Step function where you can put in your problem and it'll just give you the next, you can click the next step and it'll tell you what one thing you should do next for when you're stuck but you're not completely lost. Or you could have the That's Right, where you just want to verify before you submit. With Next Step, you can get help on your homework in real time using the artificial intelligence software. Next Step Homework Helper is designed to help you facilitate your learning, not just giving you the answer, but helping you learn the process. The service only costs $2.99 a month. However, if you go to nextstep.com/classyroom and input the code classyroom25, you can get 3 months free. Nextstep.com/classyroom and input the code classyroom25, you will get 3 months free of Next Step help.
Wow,
Next Step
that's
student
awesome.
subscription, taking things one step at a time. So our next topic, getting back into the meat of it, talking about maintenance. According to the same average or annual maintenance report by the Interagency Commission on School Construction in Maryland, the 3 counties we're talking about, Baltimore City Public School System, achieved a grade of 69.15, which according to their metric is not adequate. And then Montgomery County achieved a grade of 75.31, which is in the category of adequate. And Baltimore County Public Schools also received a grade of 72.85, which is also known as adequate. These districts also have an average age of the school buildings of, in Baltimore City, 37, which is the second highest in Maryland, only behind Kent County, I believe. And also Baltimore County, which had an average age of 31.9, which is very close to the Maryland average of 30 years old. And then you also have Montgomery County with an average age of 24.41, which is one towards the younger end of building age in districts in Maryland. And over the 268 different schools assessed by the AMR, there's a trend where as age increased, the quality of facilities decreased. So with these districts having higher age schools being less funded, the qualities tend to be less adequate. My question for you three is, how do you think like the maintenance level of the surroundings, like the upkeep of the buildings and like the pathways and things of that nature, how would that affect like how much you're able to focus in school, or like how you really be able to learn?
I have a personal experience. My high school was built in 1960, the year, after previously
Oh.
transferring from another school that is now middle school that was built in 1902. And these schools, at least my high school, I'm from Charles County, which I know it's at one of the three counties, but we have like a lot of older high schools. We have like one new one. And so every couple of years, a county is allowed to have, or not a county, a high school is allowed to have like an upgrade. And our county, my high school at least was not one of those high schools recently. I think it's next or second of next on the list after a few other high schools in my county. But we would have issues where our high school, like the bricks were falling out of the wall, like the building itself was deteriorating. The bathroom stalls did not have doors, so if you wanted to use the bathroom you couldn't because there was no doors. So I think, at least from my personal experience, that would cause problems with focusing, because it's like if I had to use the bathroom, I could not go because I did not want to go where there was a bathroom with no door. Like that lack of privacy makes someone not want to go, and that causes like focusing problems, ability to feel comfortable like going to school, feeling safe at school. I think that with a lot of rise, at least with like school shootings that we saw, at least for us, our freshman sophomore-ish year, and even still now, I think COVID kind of decreased that just because not everyone was in school. I think that like your building not being like structurally sound makes it hard to focus because you don't feel safe or don't feel comfortable in your school. And I think not having like newer facilities makes it hard for a student to like succeed to like their fullest potential. Because if you go to like a different high school in my county, a newer one, they have new everything. Like they have an indoor swimming pool, they have like new technology, new classrooms, bigger classrooms. In my middle school, our classrooms were divided by like foam dividers. There were no physical walls in most of our high school, or in most of my middle school. So you could hear like the teacher next door or down the hall or around. You could hear everything going on, kids talking, being noisy, everything. You could hear a video in another teacher's classrooms. It was so hard to focus because there was just so much other distraction due to like the lack of actual building there. And I think that not giving students like the equal means to like be in a building that's the same as other ones, where everyone's given the same like good building, good classrooms, good technology, good like facilities, makes it a lot harder for students to focus and do well compared to like other schools that might have really good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I don't have any personal experience with that, I guess, because I don't know, Westchester is a relatively well-funded county in New York, but I can totally imagine how that would affect one's learning environment and their mentality when it comes to learning. Like if you go to school and you're seeing stuff like falling apart, or like you're saying with foam dividers in between classrooms, you wouldn't be able to focus, and it builds upon some students' all inherent disinterest in school, because even with all of the perfect equipment, you're still going to have students that aren't as into learning or into school as others, and I think that would just build on it and like really have a massive impact on some certain students' mentality when it comes to learning.
Yeah, definitely. I feel would exacerbate some attention issues, or just like kind of investment in education, like by students and teachers alike. So also something important to note while thinking about the ages of these buildings. And so according to one article I read, more than 95 buildings in Baltimore City public schools are more than 50 years old. And put that in context, like a lot of these materials such as lead and asbestos and things like that are hazardous, like being used in construction of buildings such as schools, didn't end all that long ago. Like they were still in use in like the 70s and 80s in a lot of cases. So a lot of these schools are still potentially at risk for having these materials which may affect education. Like in fact, House Bill 636 of Maryland State Legislature, which was passed back in May of 2021, mandated that schools continually test for lead or provide like exclusively bottled water with no access to water outlets, things like that. Where like, so this still is affecting schools to this day. Additionally, like heating and AC units in a lot of like in the district we're talking about, Baltimore County had 0 deficiencies in like heating AC, whereas MoCo had 4 minor deficiencies, whereas Baltimore City had 14 minor deficiencies in like HVAC, according to this annual maintenance report, which is hard to wrap your head around a little bit. That like just like allowing these things to continue and exacerbate.
I totally get that though. Having those deficiencies in classrooms, and maybe not in classrooms specifically, but on a school's campus, or with regards to I don't know, certain learning equipment, can also have an impact on both the student's safety and again their mentality when going to school. Like we mentioned previously, how it could lower morale when it comes to learning. Like for example, in my school, I think in my high school, I think it was freshman year, and I think it's happened multiple times throughout my high school career, or it had happened multiple times, but they needed to like shut down the water fountains because the water quality was like too low for students to drink. And it was kind of wild because it's like, okay, so then where am I getting water from? I am thirsty, I need a drink, I cannot drink water. And I mean, I don't think it was much of a problem for me since I usually just brought a big water bottle to school anyways that I kept in my bag. But the water fountains around school got used a lot each day, and walking around parched trying to learn is it's not the most fun thing, definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I had the same problem at my school with like the water, and there were so many rumors that the water had lead and stuff like that, and nobody wanted to drink from those, and like the school never talked about it, never addressed it. So we're like, I mean, I guess we're just not drinking water,
Yeah.
and that's
I,
very unhealthy.
yeah, I feel like we did the same thing. It was always like the rumors going around like there's lead in the water. You drink the
Yeah.
water, you're gonna die. Don't drink any of the water ever. And I feel like I never really knew what was going on with that, since it was never like a topic that was brought up explicitly by the school. It wasn't like, hey, we have this problem with our water.
Yeah.
This is how we're gonna fix it. They didn't inform the students. It was just like, water's off today, guys. Sorry about that.
Go back to the HVAC thing. I found the statistic where, according to one article I read, 80% of the time missed, like for school, like 80% was due to either failure of heating or cooling systems, like in Baltimore City, that is. Like 80% of the time that school was missed was because of failures in one of those systems. That like, so that means that they weren't learning because of that.
Real quick, I can imagine that has a huge impact on learning, especially in like coming back to school beginning of fall, end of summer, no cooling. That's going to be really tough. You're sitting in class sweating like profusely, trying to flip the page, and you're getting stuck to the seat. And again, that's a distraction from learning. And then on the flip side, in winter, not having any heating, and you're wearing a winter jacket in a building. Again, not the most conducive environment to effective learning.
Yeah, and going off of that, like I know a lot of my friends just don't wear coats because like they get off the bus and then they go into class and see no reason to bring a coat and stuff because like they're lazy. So imagine like not having heating and not having your jacket and just sitting there in class, like you cannot concentrate on anything.
I feel like for me, I wanted to say something about the water stuff that you guys were talking about. There was like one time in my high school where we literally had the water turned off because there was like stuff about lead poisoning and stuff like that. And I think just not having like adequate heating and cooling for your school makes it so hard to focus, because like if you're overheated, you can't focus on your work. And if you're too cold, you also can't focus on your work. And I think that just not having like an comfortable environment for students makes it hard to just learn and focus on your work when you're more like concerned about if you're hot or cold or hungry or you have to go to the bathroom or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. So a forward-thinking question for you guys and our listeners. So What do you think can be done in the future to help like remedy or alleviate these problems? Like, are they truly as bad as they seem?
I do think that they are as bad as they appear. Maybe not to an outside from an outside perspective, but as a student who has experienced, I don't know, being too hot in a classroom, not having water available to you during the day. Yeah, it is kind of as bad or even sometimes worse than it appears. Because you're like, no water for the day, bring a water bottle. What happens when they say no water when you get to school and you forgot your water bottle, or you get to class and it's absurdly cold or absurdly warm for no apparent reason? I think in the future, maybe if the facilities physically can't be fixed themselves immediately, since like you got to construction, fix this, fix that, it takes time. I think having an effective communication line to students and parents to inform them about facilities issues would be extremely, extremely helpful in allowing them to prepare for it. Like if they discover an issue with the water the day before a school day, reach out to the parents, reach out to the students, say, hey, bring a water bottle today. We're not going to have water fountains up today because of this issue. If you have any questions, reach out here or contact X person. I feel like that would just make students and parents more connected and just feel like they have a say, or I don't know, can avoid these problems in the future.
Yeah, and also like something just as simple as like having backup water bottles or like things for students to use. And also like there are many issues that you can't foresee and like that will happen at inconvenient times. But for the lead water, I feel like it's so easy to like just check into it and like keep people updated on the health of your water. And I think that's just something that they can do.
If you, our listeners, have any comments or suggestions on anything, please let us know and email us at classyroompod@gmail.com. That is classyroompod@gmail.com. That's all we have for today. The bell has rung. Catch us next time on the Classy Room, where we'll be discussing supplies.